So what if I don't want to automatically start at 0? We can expand the for loop to include 3 values, a starting point, an ending point, and an increment by value. So this is what it would look like for variable in range with a start, an end, and an increment by. And the colon at the end would require us to tab in order to do stuff within the for loop. So here's an example. For count in range 1 to 3, we already know that if I just put one value inside the parentheses, it automatically stands for the ending point. If I put 2 values in there, the first value is the starting point, and the second value is the ending point. So if I print my count variable, this would print 1 and 2. If you remember, the ending point is exclusive, which means it does not include that last ending point. So here's an example of for count in range 3, 12, and 2. Now I have a starting point, I have an ending point, and now I have an increment value. And if I wanted to print my counter now, we are going to start at 3, and we're going to count up to, but not including 12, but we're going to do it by 2s. So you can see I'm counting up odd values up to, but not including 12. So let's try this out. So how about if we begin with the start and the end? So let's see if we can count from 1 to 5. So I'm going to put a header, print a header in there, and then I'm going to add a for loop in range. I'm going to have a start value of 1 and an end value of 6. And you say to yourself, I thought we want to go to 1 to 5. Remember, the 1 is inclusive, the starting point is inclusive, but the ending value is exclusive, which means that it will not print all the way up to 6. And then I'm just going to print that counter variable. Now, as I said before, that counter variable is just a variable. So whether I call it count or if I call it number, it doesn't really matter because that value is just a variable name. So let's run it and see what we get. So now I have my header and we are indeed counting from 1 to 5. So I'm going to have a print statement at the end that separates runs of these looping structures. This time I'm going to print done, and I'm going to force a new line inside of the print statement using the \n inside of a text field. And this should print done, and then force a couple of new lines. And then how about if we print squares from 1 to 6? So this is what I would like to print, something like 3 squared is equal to 9. So this is an example of what I would like to see each time I run through the loop. So I'm going to use the string format. I'll put the F inside of the print statement, and then I'm going to have a string that says number squared is equal to, and to square a number, you just use, this is the Python operator to do a square. So I'm going to take whatever my number is, and I'm going to square it. So this is the base, this is the exponent to square, and then let's run it and see if we get squares. So we are running from 1 to 6. Remember, the 6 is exclusive, so it does not include my 6. All right, I'll add a print statement on line 13 to separate the runs of the program, and then I'm going to prompt the user for the number of students that are present. If you'll notice, this int value, I am going to read in, and the input always brings it in as a string. And so if I want to be able to use it as a number, I'm going to typecast it to an int by surrounding the entire input statement with an int. All right, so let's see if we can count through the number of students. So now my for loop has the starting point of 1, and the ending point is going to be students plus 1, because with my square, I did say in range 1 to 6, I can see the range 1 to 6, but it only went up to 5. And that's because the ending point is exclusive. So if I want to go all the way up to the number of students that are present, I'm going to have to add 1 to it. And then let's see if we can just print student 1 checked in, student 2 checked in, student 3 checked in, and so on, all the way up to the number of students that were entered. So if I say 5 students were checked in, I would like it to say 1 to 5. If I say that there were 10 students that checked in, I would like it to say 1 to 10. In order to do that, just like we did when we were counting birthday greetings, I'm going to have to add 1 to my ending point in order to be able to include the ending point that the user wanted. So let's try all 3 values, a start value, an end value, and an increment by. And we are going to count from 10 to 20. So I'm going to use my for loop for number in range 10 to 21, because we know that the ending point is exclusive, and I'm just going to count by ones. I'm also going to add a print statement at the end of this, and I'm going to copy my print statement above my students, so then when I run it, I can see that we are counting from 10 to 20, and we're counting by ones, but that's not very impressive. Let's see if we can count by 5. So I'm going to put a header on line 29 saying that we are counting by 5s, and this time I'm going to say for number in range starting at 5, we're going to go all the way up to 51, but this time we're going to count by 5s. And we're just going to print that counter variable, which we are calling number. So I need some students, and now we are counting by 5, starting at my starting point up to but not including my ending point, and we are incrementing by 5. Now I know that if I repeat this with 55, I might expect it to go all the way up to 55, but as we said, the ending point is always exclusive, so it still only goes to 50. Let's see if we can print even numbers. So I'll put my header on line 35. I'll say for number in range, let's start at 2. We'll go all the way up to 11. And now my increment by is 2. And then we're going to print my my counter variable number. And it should run all the way up to 10. And as of course, if I put a 12 in there, we know that the ending point is exclusive. So it's still not going to go all the way to 12. So how about if we do one more of them, starting on line 41, I'm just going to print a header. And this time we're going to, the range is going to be starting at 1, all the way up to, but not including 26. And we're just going to count up by 1. Now my counter variable is called seat. So that counter variable is just a variable name. And then I'm going to mirror back the seat numbers. So we have some students, and now I can see that we are running seat 1 all the way up to 25, but not including my end value. So if I can count up, it seems to me that I should be able to count down. If that increment by value tells me the step that I can make, it would seem like if I put a negative increment by, that it would count down. So let's run this, but keep in mind my starting point has to be high. We'll start at 10. My ending point has to be low, so up to but not including 0, and then we are going to count down. So now I can see we're counting down from 10 to 1. I'm going to add a final print statement on line 53, and I'm going to force a couple of new lines. So we have a couple of students present, and now once I finish with my for loop, flush to the left, my print statement is going to say blast off. And because I have a /n inside of a string, it will force a couple of new lines. But I won't be able to see those new lines until I do something else. So how about if we count down by 2s? So we're counting down. I need my starting point to start high. I need my ending point to end low. And then my increment by, we're going to count down by 2s. And then I will just display my counter variable. So here we go. We counted down by 1s. Now we are counting down by 2s until we up to, but not including the ending point.